Welcome, everybody, to a new episode of Extra Time presented by In 90 Minutes. Uh, Luke wasn't able to join us tonight, but I am joined by the Davids. You guys officially have a name now, kind of like the Coneheads or Three Stooges, but there's only two of you. There's not three or four of you. So, but how are we doing tonight? We're actually recording on a different night, Tuesday night. Just works better for everybody's schedule. So, how are you guys doing tonight?
Yeah, doing pretty well. Excited to chop it up. I know it's been a tough couple weeks for Orlando City fans, so hopefully we can give some insight and give some perspective to maybe what's going on here.
Yeah, doing great. Missed yesterday because I'm covering for my partner in Tampa, and I got a late call, and basically I was working while the show was on, but I was able to watch a great show as always. So yeah, I mean, he had David just made an understatement. It's been really bad, and it may get worse. So we'll be talking about that.
Definitely, definitely. So tonight we're basically covering one big topic. I really don't feel like any of the other shows we've touched on it, all the other podcasts and stuff, but never really hunkered down and really focused on what it takes to rebuild, kind of our long-winded perspective on where we're at in the rebuild. Um, and kind of where we think we'll be after the summer transfer window. And just we'll go on there, as everybody knows that watches. We start on a topic and kind of just let what we talk about, let it lead. So basically, starting out, everybody knows that we lost a lot of players. And for those watching, I'm putting a chart up that just kind of shows our departures and arrivals, and how much we spent, the market value of the players that we brought in and that we sold. And the surprising thing to me, and it kind of shows what I feel like Ricardo's thought process is, and what he's trying to obtain, is even without Griezmann, we were less than 2,000. Our market value decreased by less than $2,000. That's losing a DP. That's losing a potentially DP caliber right back in Freeman. Player that wanted a DP type salary in Araujo. Enrique, that was definitely a TAM player. Possibly even a lower designated player contract coming up. But we either sold them, or in Araujo's case, wasn't able to sign him to a renewed contract. So with all that said, we still were only down a little less than $2 million. And everything you see on the screen is transferred over from euros to dollars based on the information on Transfermarkt. I know that's a little debatable. The website itself. But, I wish one thing I would have added is the age of the players we lost versus the age of the players that we brought in. Because you look at players like, that we lost, like Kyle Smith, Muriel, Gillespie, even to a little bit Araujo. They were all in their, mid 20s or later. And really, outside of Crepeau and Ojeda, everybody else is younger than 25. Well, obviously Griezmann. Everybody else is younger than 25. So to me, Ricardo came into the season, obviously hoping that Marin would perform better than he did last year. And kind of take a step
Which,
up in the
which I
left
think you
back
can make an argument that he has ish. I mean, he's had moments,
ish.
right? But yeah,
Yeah.
it's a half step maybe, but it's
Mhm.
definitely better than it was last year.
Yeah, definitely. Um,
And John,
and
to break it down a little bit, because I know we're starting really general, but if we
yeah,
bring it down a little bit, because one of the arguments I see common online, and I'm sure you guys have seen it too, is that Ricardo went into this with the expectation that these U22 players were the end all be all, right? Like they were the answer for what this team was going to be. Let me first start and dispel the notion by saying that was never an expectation, right? Your U22 players are folks that you bring in, and within like a year, maybe half a year if you're lucky, a year and a half at the worst, these guys rise to the level to be regular contributors for you, right? And then the overall goal for MLS teams is to sell these guys on and make money, right? That's really what the goal is. It's to try to get great young players in to go do that. Anyone who's followed Orlando City over the last couple seasons know our U22s have not been great, and they've been a somewhat lower quality than in seasons past. The only kind of bright spot I would say out of most of those U22s was Ramiro Enrique and Cesar Araujo are the only two you can really point to say they were 100% successful and everything that we were kind of looking for them to do, right?
And Torres originally came in as a U22
no,
as
he was
well.
a young DP. He came in as a young DP.
He was under the DP. Okay.
Yeah, Facundo Torres was a young DP. Because remember, don't forget about the young DP rule, which saved you more salary and also allowed you to bring in really great players, which obviously Facundo Torres ended up being for us. But so the big thing is we shift to this year, right, in this offseason, and Ricardo goes down to his sort of safe haven, right? He does really well in South America, more specifically in Brazil. He's got a ton of contacts. He's done a ton of scouting down in Brazil. And he brings in, which a lot of Brazilian media and fans and the like have said, some of the 3 best Brazilian youth players you could have brought up from Brazil, right? All these fan bases and media were pissed about Luis Otavio getting sold because if you guys aren't familiar with the situation, Internacional floated with relegation at the end of last year. They saved themselves from relegation, and a large part of that was because Otavio played out of his head, and he played really well for them at 18 years old, by the way, and a team like that. Thiago helped Bahia win their regional championship. Without his brace and then hat trick, they don't win that championship, so he helps carry him to that. Iago doesn't do much at the first team level, but he helps carry Flamengo's U20s to multiple championships, holds the armband for U20 Brazil. I don't have to keep going through all these accolades, right? These guys are a higher profile U22 than this team has ever seen. Here's the difference of what I think fans are not really grasping right now. The goal was for them to never walk in and start right away. That was never a plan, right? It had to become the plan because people like Wilder Cartagena got hurt, because people like Robin Janssen got hurt. And so there was no choice at that point. You had to bring these guys in and get them into the fold. And Otavio didn't start training until the final week of preseason, and he wasn't even in group training by the final week of preseason. Iago came in 2 weeks before the season started, right? After visa issues and all the other things that went with it. It's unfair, I feel like, for us to judge these kids right now 5 or 6 games into the season. It's just not fair, especially with the fact that your coach left 3 games in. You're with an interim manager who I personally think is in over his head. I don't think he really knows how to handle this team at the moment. And so it's unfair to put so much blame and hurt on these players. Now, have they had bad games? Absolutely. I'm not going to sit here and tell you they've been better than what they've been. But honestly, who else on the roster was going to come in here and do a better job or just the same? And I guess that goes on to the next question. But that's really the first thing I want to hit on, John, is that just the U22,
and that's what I was getting to. Yeah. That's literally, I was getting to, Ricardo didn't plan on the injuries that happened. Cartagena, namely Cartagena and Janssen. Iago was going to be the guy that comes off the bench, if one of the 2 center backs has a yellow card or gets a knock in a game or whatever. And the same with Miller. Miller was never supposed to be the alternate starter on the senior team. He was supposed to be starting on OCB. So, I think, to me anyway, and, I'd love to hear what you guys think, and David, you kind of said it. I feel like Ricardo used the short transfer window to kind of prepare us for next season, with the three young players we brought in. And then obviously we brought in Brian Ojeda and Dorsey and Crepeau to fill kind of immediate needs that we had, even before with Ojeda, even before the injury to Cartagena, I believe. David Valentin, what's your mindset on where we started the season?
Well, I'm very pleased with what David spoke about when it comes to the roster. Now, um, let's talk a little bit about Ricardo, okay? Because if you specifically if you go to Facebook, you see all this. This is what you wanted, and this guy is evil. He doesn't know what he's doing, and all this other stuff. Uh, Talks about wearing paper bags and chanting that the Wolves need to sell is all stupid nonsense. That's all that is. I'm here to tell you that if you think that, I'm embarrassed for you. I really am. Welcome to club football. This is what club football is. Peaks and valleys. Now, one of the things that I have to remind everybody is that when we were in the USL, we were we were the Real Madrid, Barcelona, PSG, Manchester City all rolled into one because we overspent all everybody. Our manager and players were miles ahead of our competition, and all we did was win. In fact, in all 4 years of the USL, Orlando City lost less than 10 league games. Less than 10 league games. In all the 4 years that I went to watch Orlando City live, I only saw it lost once. So you have a fan base that you cultivated on winning. We come to the MLS, and for the sake of brevity, I'm not going to go over everything. You guys know what happened. Ricardo is a man born into the football culture of Brazil. He's a lawyer by trade. He went to school in the States, went to school in Brazil. He was a player agent. He worked for different clubs, leagues, etc., etc. He's a businessman in the business of football. He is passionate. He has always been a friend to the podcaster. I gotta throw it out there. Not only us, but all the other podcasts that cover the club. And he's a very nice guy. Him compared to Luis Musi. Luis Musi was more of an introvert. Ricardo is more of an outgoing guy. He likes to chew the fat with people, high fives and everything. And I think that's how he's gonna win over the fan base. Also, he's very secretive. He keeps his cards against his chest, and he, like I said, he is very approachable to the podcast. By the way, you have to earn his trust because if you're out there blabbing and you're out there, talking crap about people, obviously he's gonna push you to the side. But Ricardo has a vision of what he wants to do, and he's fighting three battles in three different fronts. Number one, the fan base. How do you make changes that are gonna be painful, get rid of players that people love, and at the same time, those people still support your move? Right there, right now is I'm here to tell you that those people cannot see. They have business myopia. That's what in business school I was told. Business myopia is a fact that the people see what they want to see, and they fail to see the big picture. Right. So there's that right now, based on what we see on social media. Then you have the battle with the ownership. The Wolves are not football people. They are not football people. They own an NFL team. It's one of those situations where they're like, oh, I went to a World Cup game or I watched a game in Europe, and I think this is gonna be fun to own a football team in MLS. Well, now you have it. Now you know the do's and don'ts, and they have a lot of footballs. They taking pictures with opposition players, hanging out with opposition ownership, out in the open, walking around. There's nothing more geeky than see Mark Wolf on his first game at Miami, walking around with a camera hanging from his from his neck. Ridiculous. And again, the man is a billionaire. A lot of respect, incredible businessman. I met him. I spoke with him briefly. I have a lot of respect for him and his family, the family story, all that. But to conclude, the third battle that he's fighting is a simple one, my friends. A simple one is, like I said, ownership buy them into the idea of investing money. But the battle is creating a culture, a winning culture in Orlando, like the one we had in USL. We lost that north. We tried to do things cheaply. and Orlando is seen as a team of mediocrity. We won the 2022 Open Cup, and my friends, in football terms, that was ages ago. We have to play to win, and we have to do so with players that are going to be talented, and the goal is that. Now, the reality is that it's gonna take time because he just took over last year, and Musi on his way out saddled him with a 3-year contract on Oscar. I personally, he was doing right by his boy, but he mortgaged our future as a club. He's no longer with the organization, so that's how you burn. That's how you burn the place down on your way out. The other thing is we have a lot of players on contracts that you can just fire people. This is not a McDonald's where you, under new administration, you fire everybody. There's contracts for a reason. So the when you see LAFC, you see Miami, you see all these teams that are super successful. They're successful because they took time, they took risk. LAFC has missed playoffs. LAFC has fired managers, and look at the team they have because they are pointing towards that. That's where we should aspire to be. And I finished with this: League One in England, the league where my team and Luke's team play, just crown a champion that is going to be in the championship for the first time in their history, and that's Lincoln City. Okay, Lincoln City did it the right way. They soldier on. They recruited the right players. They didn't break the bank, meaning that they didn't have to spend tons of money in order to be successful. They got a manager with a system. They soldier on, and now they're reaping the benefits. 10 years ago, those guys were in fifth division. Now they're gonna be in second division. This is possible if you buckle up and you take the beating, because that's what's gonna happen to us as we move forward. Talking like this is the NFL and we're just a draft pick away from making the championship next year is nonsense. If you want to be here, this is what you want it to be. You want it to be a football club. You want it to support Orlando City. This is what it takes, guys.
Well, and to add on to what you said, David, the big thing, number one, that Ricardo has to do as well is the culture has to be changed, right? I mean, he's talked about that starting at the end of last season when he had the interview with Mike Gramajo, and he said, hey, we didn't want the season to end this way. This is not what we expected. This is unacceptable. All the things that he threw out there, right? And he talked about that there was issues in the locker room. There's issues with chemistry. The culture, is something that doesn't change overnight. It takes time, right? My biggest thing, and this is sort of the second part with Ricardo, I don't know Ricardo as well as a lot of the other podcasters in the space. I haven't even been able to meet the guy in person yet. I look forward to when I get that opportunity. Just like any other fan, I'm not trying to say that I'm on a different level than anybody else. By all means, if you get the pleasure to meet the CSO, do it. I think it's awesome for him to be available and out there to go do that. But what I do know from him and the things I have heard is that the thing, he has been very transparent in a lot of different ways, and he likes to speak directly sometimes, but then most of the time through other people, right? We'll hear it from some of the national folks, or we'll hear it from maybe somebody who's been covering Orlando City for a while. You'll hear it from those different things. The thing that confuses me a little bit, and I would have preferred more clarity on what I would consider me as a diehard fan, is you phrased it as a rebuild or as a reload to start the season, and this isn't a reload. This is a rebuild. So I would have rather had the transparency of, hey, fans, listen, we looked at the roster, we looked at the coaching staff, we looked at the culture, and we can't reload this team. It's more of a rebuild now. So we need to get our hands dirty, roll up the sleeves a little bit, and just do the crap shoveling that we need to do to get this roster in the right place culturally and skill-wise, right? I understand that there are fans out there that now are playing the what-if game of, well, what if we kept Galese and we could talk to him about bringing his salary down? Or what if there was a way to keep Kyle Smith or Dagger Dan or Enrique? Let me be very clear with you guys. Dagger, Dan, and Enrique wanted more playing opportunity that we couldn't offer them. So we sold them when we could, and we got good money out of them. That's what you do. You do right by the player so that when the next player comes in and they're looking for a move, you're known as a club to do that, right? With Galese, from what I understand, the club just decided it was time. There wasn't a number that they were really thinking about in their head. They said, we just think it's time to move on to the next era. We appreciate all of Pedro's time here, but it's time to go. And I know people like Alonso, Inca have said things like, oh, well, he was willing to take a big pay cut and blah, 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 blah. Maybe, but the club just figured it was time, and that's fine. The club can make that decision, right? Kyle Smith, we offered him a contract. We tried to talk to him about it. It turns out he was going to get slightly better money by him going home and playing for Cincinnati. He went home and he played for Cincinnati, and that's fine. We do right by the player. We put him where he needs to be. I'm tired of the argument in the story of like, well, we sold all of our good players. This is why this guy's an idiot. No, he did right by the players because that's what he's supposed to do. It's a business as well, and you have to build relationships to be a successful business. It's going to hurt. We're in a hurting period right now. It sucks. But here's the flip side, and I'm sure John was going to get to this with the roster in a second. We have young talent to try to fill some of these gaps that were available on this team. And unfortunately, so far, our first coach and our interim coach has refused to use that talent and this academy that Luis Muzzi and Ricardo Moreira and Oscar Pareja have built over the last few years. And yet we continue to ignore it. Like John has said all the time, we sold Thomas Williams because we saw that our coach wasn't going to use him. Why? He could have been a useful piece for a team that struggled with center back depth to start the season. Like, it doesn't make sense. You have somebody in Zachariah Taifi who is a natural fit, and I would argue probably both fullback spots. But this club decided to go out and get Griffin Dorsey really fast and pay the money they paid for Dorsey. I'm not saying Dorsey's a bad player, but you've been grooming Taifi for the past year-ish. It depends on where you look at his time of when he was getting time with the first team, but you've been grooming him for a while. The plan was to always have Taifi back up Freeman if, that was going to happen. Tarir Reed-Brown, I think his development's been stunted between his jump between OCB and the main team. I don't know what the issue is. John obviously has seen a lot of OCB games as well. Reed-Brown had looked really solid last year, almost to the point where he was sometimes the best defender on the field. So I don't know why there's this weird disconnect of we're not using the talent that's already there. And so to really just wrap up, though, to get back to Ricardo, is that, I think for me, I just felt like I was sold a false sense of goods a little bit. Just be honest with me. And I get that it doesn't help with the casuals, right? Because with the casuals, it's you don't want to hear the story of this team's looking for 2027 or looking for the 27-28 season. But sometimes you just have to be honest with your fan base and say, hey, sorry, guys, it's going to be a shitty one this year, but we're going to go get it in 2027 in the sprint season. We're going to go get it in the 27-28 season. We just need to wait for these pieces to come together.
And real quick, John, if you don't mind, one of the things that David just touched is this idea that the casuals don't they want instant gratification. Football is not that. Football is never been about instant gratification. Look at what happened in Atlanta. When Atlanta came in for the last, 10 years or 9 years now, we've been told that they are the gold standard of support. Look at all these 75,000 people. It was empty this past weekend. Nobody there. Why? Because they haven't lifted a trophy since 2019. They haven't been competitive since that year. They have fired 4 managers while we have kept Oscar. And look at where they are. Going back to the nostalgia well with Tata Martino and Lizard Boy, what's his name? The Miguel Almiron. And it has not worked out. So I want people to understand that there's the optics. Look at this fan base. They're the best fan base ever. Put them to lose consistently, and let's see who has the gold standard of fandom. Orlando City has been dog water for a long time, and we still put 22,000 people in the stands. I don't know how, but I drive around town and there's Orlando City plates in almost every car. So you have to understand, fan base, that what we're talking about here is not. First of all, we're not gaslighting people, and we're not putting patches. We're speaking like fans. We don't owe ourselves to anybody without any strings. We don't. Like I said, we are very critical of everybody. The people in the front office tell us all the time, "Thank you for being who you are." So I'll leave it at that. So I just want before John, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just wanted to say that because for a long time, our fan base is thrown into the situations where like, oh look, LAFC, look at all the people they left when they were losing. That place was empty. So don't think that our situation is just specific to us, like we're bad fans or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, to go kind of back to what David Valentin was first talking about, he brought up the Wilfs and he brought up something interesting about Ricardo that I kind of feel like happened when we got our teeth kicked in by New York City. I feel like Ricardo and the Wilfs, especially the Wilfs on their side, came into this season thinking they were going to be able to kind of keep the status quo, you know, finish. Last year was an anomaly. My goodness. Um, and that was just something that happened. Morale was low because of how League's Cup ended. Yada yada yada. So they come into this year, they plug and play, plug some guys into the roster, and kind of like they've done the last 4 seasons now. And because you got to think the Wilfs came in their first full year. We win after within their first full 2 years, almost within their first full year, we win the Open Cup. Then the next season, we finish second in the league. And I feel like the Wilfs had this mindset, the ownership group had this mindset that we can play this money ball and still, as long as we have a couple players in these key positions that can do the job, we'll always be right there challenging like we were in 23, 24. And because really up until, August, September of last year, we were right there challenging. We were not very, very far off. And I feel like Ricardo had that perception and was also being told by ownership, hey, this is what we're doing. We're not spending money. We're going to keep trying to do what we do, kind of plug in players where we need to, and we're going to go forward. And then I feel like that New York City match happened, and all of a sudden Ricardo's out there saying, we're going to be aggressive in the summer window. We're going to spend money, all of that. And I really feel like he had a change in what he was saying in his interviews, and especially the podcast he did the week after it was official, week before, somewhere around that, when we officially signed Griezmann. I feel like him saying that versus what he was saying in the off season was a complete almost 180 in what he thought he had to do, or thought had to be done to make each season successful. And I really feel like that's where kind of David Valentin brought up, or maybe it was David G. One of the Davids brought it up, how he came in saying it was a reload, and then all of a sudden now it's a rebuild. I really feel like that New York City match really was one of those, we better rebuild quick or we're going to lose everything.
Yeah, and John, I'll say this, I don't have an issue with the circumstances changing, right? I understand football is ever changing and you've got to be reactionary where you need to react, right? I think my issue with it is I think the overall evaluation of the club in general going into the new season just seemed off. Even if it was a thing from ownership where it was like, hey, we'd prefer you to just stay more pat, spend money where you think you need to spend money, but don't, spend more than you need to, and just kind of take care of this team and see what you can do there. But then and it was funny because I was talking to, my friend John Rollins, shout out to him. He's on his way to England now. We talked about this, and his club Stoke does sort of like a director's report once a month where their director goes on and it's all done by the club and it's posted as a video, but he comes out there and they say, hey, how do you think the last string of games have been? What do you think about the team right now in terms of players themselves? What about the technical staff? All the 9 yards, right? And he asks a few few questions, and you get like a good sense in about 15 and 20 minutes about what's going on. And he sent me a video, just kind of watch it to see what it looks like. I understand that MLS plays under different media rules, and we understand how outrageous and ridiculous it can be. But for a guy that really seems to really want to connect with the fans, because I think that's really something that I've seen from Ricardo versus like Luis Muzzi or Nicky Budalic or any of the other folks that have been in that front office, why not just like set something up with the own media arm and just kind of say, hey guys, like we've done Griezmann already. We're looking for more, right? And I know he did that a little bit on Sirius XM when he did the interview with Dax and Max Bretos and all that kind of stuff. And if you guys didn't check that out, I recommend doing it if you have Sirius. If you don't, I get it. It's not worth maybe having.
It changed to cut in. It changed my mindset on a decent amount on what I was thinking about Ricardo.
Me too. And I think, and that's the kind of stuff though that like I'd love to hear more frequently, right? And in hopefully in an outlet that more people can hear, because unfortunately I had to kind of like bite the bullet and then transcribe for a lot of people and kind of share what I had heard on that show, which I don't mind doing, but it's one of those things of like, it didn't need to be behind a paywall, whatever, right? We don't have to get into that, but it's just nice to hear like what his mindset is going into it, right? Like we're not done with just Griezmann, right? Here's where we see Griezmann playing, but this is where we also need to support him. And then he talked about the defense of like we need one or two more pieces in the defense, and he talked about if things need to go out to make things come in, then that's fine too, right? Those are the things you want to hear about, especially for us nerds when it comes to roster building of like how we're going to go and build this roster, right? Because the other thing that drives me nuts is the whole argument all off season of the Wilfs don't spend. Guys, what are we talking about? The Wilfs don't spend. Like, first of all, let's just say this. Philadelphia never frickin' spends, and they've won how many supporter shields? They've gone to how many MLS Cups? They've won how many other trophies? That team never freaking spends. They don't spend, and they found a way to make it work. And I get that Moneyball doesn't work for everyone. As somebody who is from Clearwater originally, I'm a Tampa Bay Rays fan. They play Moneyball all the time. Their ownership doesn't spend money, so I get it, and they have seasons that are really good, and they have seasons that are bad. I understand the dichotomy of that. And look at Philly now. They're the only team worse than us this season. I get it. I just don't think Bradley Carnell's a good coach, but again, different topic for a different day. But to go in here and say the Wilfs haven't spent, they spend almost $10 million on U22s, players that we just told you guys really shouldn't be making an impact until about 6 months to a year into their time. They're a long-term play, right? That's what a U22 is in this case. You bring in someone like Brian Ojeda, who's had very good success in the league. And again, you mostly spent funny money for it, so you didn't really spend pure dollars, right? But you give him a new contract, you pay him a new salary. You bring in Griffin Dorsey, you give him a new deal as well, right? Give him a boost in his contract. And then Crepeau, yeah, he's free, whatever. We're paying him whatever it is. But then they go out and they put their money where their mouth is by bringing in Antoine Griezmann. That's not cheap, guys. I understand it's a free transfer, but you're paying his, whatever it's going to be, $11, $12 million, $13 million. Okay, $11 million wage that you're going to pay to this guy. That's not cheap, right? And then there's the other thing that he says in the interview, which we didn't touch on, in that section on Sirius, where he says that Marco Pasalic can also be bought down. So to me, that says Ricardo's out here like, no, we're not playing, right? Like we're here to make a difference and make a dent on that. And again, if you bring another DP in, so let's say even if Marco Pasalic gets sold, the level of DP that this ownership could again spend more money on is a whole nother level of what this team could do, right? So I'm tired of the argument of the Wilfs don't spend. They're money grubbers. They just want to put up these fancy sections and whatever. And I don't agree with some of the stadium stuff, but the Wilfs are business people. They're going to try to make money where they can make money, right? It's whatever. But to me, as long as they turn around and there's ways that we can quantify them spending it on the roster, which I think you can point to this offseason, you don't have an argument. You can't make the argument that they haven't spent.
The chairman report that you were talking about, David, because my team, Stevenage, and my other team, Maccabi Haifa, do this. They treat the season ticket member as an investor. So they have these meetings. Obviously, Maccabi Haifa is a bigger organization, so it's more of you sit there and you watch the interactions, and then they select the people to ask the questions. Stevenage is more homey. It's a smaller club. So you have interactions with the chairman, with the owner of the club, with the manager, with the SLO, the supporter liaison officer, who I have championed this idea for Orlando City. We should have a face where the fans go to Is in the past it was Kay, it was Alex Leitao, it was Phil. We need to have somebody where we can complain about things. And I understand that Jared Dillon is an executive that deals with the business side of the house, but we need someone that represents the interest of the fans, because I know a lot of people say, well, isn't that what the supporter group is supposed to be? And I have argued that the supporter groups uh, uh, basically worry about their own agenda. So I digress for a minute. The situation is that when the people feel invested in the club, they need to know what's happening. Otherwise, no information breeds what you see on Facebook. The uncertainty. Where are we? We don't have a captain. We don't have a manager. Where are we going? And then when you have your caretaker manager saying it is what it is, I'm sorry, Martin. I'm gonna say it clearly. That's something that should be coming out of the mouth of somebody like me. I'm a fat dude that sits on Section 3. I go out there. I grab my sensible non-alcoholic drink. I drink. I scream. David, I don't know if you were there during the game against Miami. You heard me. I went buck wild, and I people wanted to fight me, but it's what it is. But that's me. I'm a fan. But you're the professional. You're the manager of the club, and for you to say it is what it is what it is says we are running out of ideas. We don't know what's happening. We are rudderless. And as a GM, somebody like Ricardo, that would upset me when my manager goes out there and says it is what it is, because what you're saying is
Especially somebody who's gone to bat for him, right? Ricardo has gone to
right.
bat for him on multiple occasions, and I'm not saying he's wrong by doing that,
Yeah.
but to come out and look as flat, I mean, he looked just as flat as the team did on the field on Saturday, right? I mean, honestly, that's kind of what it was. He said it 4 times, guys. I counted. He said it 4 times after each one of the questions he was asked. He slipped that in there. And again, I'm sure he's a good assistant coach. I'm sure he has his skill sets that work for him, and he had some success in Argentina. Mind you, it was second and third division Argentina, but whatever, right? He's just not the guy. And so I don't understand. At the very least, what I would do in the interim until you get the main guy in is get this guy in a room and just give him a PR lesson, or have somebody next to him who
and
can
and also
fluff it
for,
up or whatever.
I know Israeli football is not in everybody's radar, but he played for Hapoel Beersheba, and he's a club legend back there. So because I know Hapoel fan that lives here in Orlando, also supports Orlando City, that was over the moon when he was named our caretaker. But let's be honest, with OCB, he did not do that great. And if you have been watching the show long enough, you know that Luke is the one that wants scorched earth. He's like, we when you go to extract the cancer, you don't leave pieces behind. Everything has to go. And we are not advocates of people losing jobs. This obviously people have to pay their bills. Martin and I, shared ethnicity, religion, love for football. So I don't want him but the football is about results, and the results are not there. And I understand why we are where we are, but it's again, I'm sorry, John. I didn't mean to go on a tangent, but it's just frustrating to for people not to understand. A rebuild is going to take about usually takes about 2 years. My team, Stevenage, managed to do that in a season and a half. And right now we're in a playoff position with the opportunity to go to the championship for the very first time. That same manager that we have right now was an assistant that was thrown into the fire when the old manager, the man that saved Stevenage from getting relegated out of the Football League, came in with 7 games left and kept us in. The I think that football, where there's promotion relegation, and you have to fight off all this crap that happens where your club can go bankrupt and die overnight. And I have witnessed that. That puts a lot of things in perspective. Here in MLS, we have a lot of safety nets. We have a lot of ways to protect ourselves from that happening, and we don't have relegation. You have a bad season, there's next year. For my teams overseas, there's not such thing. You know, you gotta win now.
And
And
David, what'd you comment on the photo Stevenage posted of the coach celebrating?
oh yeah, yeah, you saw that
I
that
know you
little.
meant that. I know you meant for it to be funny, but you're also very truthful in what you said on that.
Oh yeah, for those that don't know, the team photographer posted this incredible picture. If you follow me on X, you probably saw my comment. And one of the things that happened, because this is what happened with Alex Ravel, the manager for Stevenage. He was appointed during the pandemic. With 10 games to go, the club was the season was abandoned. Stevenage was supposed to be relegated, but two clubs died. We won our place in the EFL in the courtroom. He did awful the first time he got fired. He was brought in as an assistant, and when he was named coach, I was like, he already failed once, but he won me over. He actually sent me a picture. Alex, somebody took a picture of Alex holding an Orlando City jersey, and I lost it on my old account. And anyhow, he proved me wrong by winning. So that's why I said, I would love for this picture to be sent to me with with him signing it. David, eat your words. I'm him. So, and who knows, it may happen. But what I'm saying is, like, we as fans, we don't know everything. The guys have been watching games with me. I'm just as passionate. I'm very reactive. I wear my emotions out in the open. But what I'm asking from the fan base is to wow, this is gonna sound such brown nosing. We have to trust the process here. There's a lot of things that as podcasters we have the privilege of knowing that we can't talk about, and I have to tell you, hold on, because it's gonna get fun in the summer. But again, it's difficult to say that when you have eaten 11 goals in the no, actually more than that, because we lost against New York City. And then, well, yeah, well, because I will say, well, okay, 11 goals that we have in, and we haven't managed to score a single goal. So obviously, it's
We're
difficult
at
to
we're at
win.
a minus 18 goal differential, David. I
Yeah.
mean, that's where
On
we're at.
track to 100 if
Yeah.
this
And
continues.
let me say this to like link this back into the sort of the roster discussion, right? Like the biggest thing I said obviously is that with the bigger losses that you take, you lose casuals, right? You just do. It's just a matter of fact. It is what it is. We could see, depending on how this season ends up for Orlando, we could see some of the stands empty just because the casuals are not going to show up. And the Pride are doing decently. The Storm have won both of their home games so far. So whatever. I don't want to get into that. But to go back to the roster, like Ricardo has said, they're open. The team is open to moving people that need to be moved and all that kind of stuff. I think there has to be a couple discussions, right? I know John's got a graphic on the depth chart, but here's the first thing that comes to mind, right? Duncan McGuire's on just a little bit over $1 million a year, right? We paid him after he did well. His move fell through and all that stuff, of course. But when Griezmann comes in, do we really want to continue to pay Duncan McGuire $1 million if he hasn't contributed a whole bunch for the team this season? I'm not trying to single him out, but that's one example that pops into my head of a guy who's on a very high TAM contract that we're paying that hasn't really contributed for us this year. I know he's down on himself for not contributing based on what I've heard from some folks, and I'm sure he is, as any player should be passionate about. But that's a lot of money you're sinking into a guy that's not giving you goal contributions right now, right? So I think that's where I think this argument kind of naturally takes us is like, are we allocating the money in the proper place to even begin with?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, he's one. You can go through the roster and pick people out, very easily. You could even go with our starting goalkeeper at this point, and a disaster of a start that he's had. You could go with Brecalo, who's greatly underperformed from what he was brought in advertised as. Atuesta, for instance. And there's guys on the roster. There's 3 guys on the roster right now, 4 guys if you want to include Gerbet, that could, I mean, obviously we have to start a second midfielder in the formation, but there's 3 guys that have shown that, at least what we see on match day, they're better than him. As bad as of a match Gusky had on Saturday, he still outshined Atuesta,
Yeah.
and that's saying something. That's how bad Atuesta was. And there's people that want to one person individual, I'll just the Davids know who I'm talking about there on X, that wants to try to say Atuesta wasn't the issue. It wasn't an issue on Saturday. I'm sorry. At least 3 of those goals, he had something to do with LA getting possession of the ball.
And John, can we say this tactically? For anyone, like Tactics 101, if you're playing a double pivot with arguably 2 6s, which is what this team is trying to do, they're the first line of defense when you go defend against a team. So if your double pivot is literally just letting dudes walk by them, because that's what was happening in the LA game, you're going to see your defensive line struggle because they're not getting any help on those runs that are following through. And to touch a little bit on the game that happened on Saturday, why is Brian Ojeda playing at right back? The guy has been all over the field all season. Whether his games have been good, bad, or indifferent, I'll leave that up to you. You can decide that. But the one thing you cannot say is that he's had that bulldog mentality all season where he's running like hell all over the field. Why in God's green earth would you put him at right back against a guy like Denny Bawanga? How does that make any freaking sense in a game like that? You stick him in the midfield, and I would tell him, stay on Son and don't be catching his shadow. Body him all game, kick him if you have to, do what you need to do to keep him in front of you. It's the very similar thing we used to tell Cesar to do against Messi when we would play Inter Miami, right? It's the same exact thought process, right? That should have been your solution. And then play somebody like a Taifi, because we know Dorsey was hurt. Play somebody like a Taifi, and if you're not comfortable with Taifi, then you put maybe the big body of Reed Brown over there, whatever you want to do, right? You have a few options you could have played out there. But Brian Ojeda was not the guy to go out there and do that, right? But Atuesta, since he's played in almost every game he's played this season, and I understand he's been banged up and all that other stuff with it as well, has looked like he's being run off the field. The guy has provided nothing in terms of a line of defense, and he's left his partner stranded on so many different opportunities. I don't blame Gusky at all for this game. This guy had no chance because his partner was all over the shop, and I think sometimes on Saturday it looked like he was playing for LA. He should have just switched jerseys, honestly, because that's how bad it was. Yeah. It just didn't make any sense. And so I think fans need to understand that, sure, some of the individual defensive performances have not been good. Brekalo, Miller, Iago have all had bad games that you can point to, right? Even Dorsey, his defending, you can point to games where his defending has been bad. Same thing at left back as well. But if they're not getting the line of defense in front of them, at least one central defensive midfielder that can do something for them, let alone the 2 that we've been parking in front of these guys. If you're not getting performance out of them, of course your defense is going to get overrun. Yep. Of course Crépeau's not going to have a chance to save some of those shots because nobody's doing anything to help these guys out.
Yeah, no, it's funny you said that about Ojeda tracking Son because I forgot to bring it up in the main show. It seemed like that's what they were doing with Gusky a lot. Is he was on Son's hip a lot, which I don't care what midfielder you are in the MLS, you're going to struggle in that situation because he's more of a handful, in my opinion, than Messi because Son never stops moving. You see the videos of Messi walking and you get a little bit of a break. Son, he was all over the pitch on, every match period. I just know that from watching the Premier League, and I'm sure it hasn't changed with LAFC. Yeah, I would have loved to see what Taifi could do against Bawanga. And it's one of those, from what I can tell by the way Taifi is, on the field, the way he plays, and just the way his mother talks on social media, he would have been pumped up for it. He wouldn't have been scared of it. I feel like Ojeda playing out of position seemed a little bit tentative, a little bit nervous to step up and make a tackle. And it brings us to the point that you made earlier, is why aren't these young guys playing? And that's part of the issue and why we're having to why this rebuild is such a painful rebuild. If the club would have done a better job of initiating these guys and getting their feet wet in the senior team, they would have been able to step in, and maybe they wouldn't have been stars. Maybe we lose 3-0 to LA, or 2-0 to Nashville or what have you. But at least these guys like Gusky, Taifi, Reed Brown to a little bit of an extent. You know, Caraballo maybe even stepping in a substitute role. If these guys were, had a little bit, obviously Caraballo and Reed Brown really only had, last season that they were, on the bench for the first team. Gusky as well, but Gusky's on a little bit different level than those two. I feel like at the time being, and as well as Taifi. Taifi and Gusky, I feel like are just a little bit of a notch ahead of where Caraballo and Reed Brown are in their development. But if we got those guys' feet wet, if we got Williams' feet wet, the last 4 seasons, because remember he made a senior team debut, our opening match of the U.S. Open Cup against the Rowdies in our stadium. That was his senior team debut. He was 17 years old, and I think he played 2 matches for us since then on the senior team. Made 2 appearances, and you can't have that. If he had his feet wet, he could step in when Janssen's injured, like for like, right there. Very similar players. I would argue that Williams is a little bit more of a natural athlete, whereas Janssen's IQ, which comes with age as well, but IQ is a little bit higher. But still, somebody could have stepped in there. We wouldn't have to be relying on 2 guys that have never played in the league and 1 guy who was in a classroom 8 months ago. So I mean that's where it starts, where the rebuild. So the pains of having to go through a rebuild is so bad because the club didn't do its due diligence. Which is why on the main show, we've always brought up, the last 2 seasons we brought up, why aren't we playing the young guys more? We say, oh, the guys are tired. We just had, 4 matches in 14 days or whatever it might be. The guys are tired. That's what the young guys are for, is to step in there and relieve that pressure. And we weren't doing it. We were running the same 14, 15 guys out there every match and not giving these young guys minutes for them to get the experience and even to a bigger extent to know if they have what it takes. When it doesn't matter as much as Reed Brown making his debut for us and his first start against our rival, who, oh, by the way, won the MLS Cup last year and on paper is an even stronger team this year.
Yeah. And John, one of the complaints in 2015 was that we didn't have a reserves, and that's why propels the club to create OCB in 2016. Which, by the way, the reserve teams in MLS was forced upon the clubs with the MLS next league. Most clubs did not believe in reserves. They're like, we're gonna buy these players, they're gonna play, and
we were one of a few, actually. Funnily enough,
right, we were one of the few. In fact, we're the only.
We took a couple hiatuses, but we, for the most part, were
correct.
If you guys remember, originally it was supposed to be Louisville City. That's why Louisville City's colors are
Thank
purple
you,
and
John.
gold.
That is very true, which failed miserably because of the distance. But
I mean, they're still a club. They're still in USL, but
yeah, they just won their 100th game, I believe. They are a powerhouse in that league. I wish them all the best. I've been to Louisville. That city breeds that club, and that's fantastic. And the one of the founders of the original Orlando City ownership group is the one that created that team, and sort of we are part of their history as they use the USL license from Orlando City that was transferred to them. But one of the things that people were complaining is that, hey, we don't have a reserve team, we don't have a way to develop. By the way, the academy costs millions of dollars. That's something that Ricardo has said in interviews before. And if you are pumping so much money, why are you pumping the money for? Create talent for who? We went to Brazil and grabbed all these great players. Where do those players came from? An academy. And those teams are so full of talent, they can spare players like that. We got Rodrigo Schlegel from Racing de Avellaneda, the club in Argentina, simply because, he was a talented guy, but we just don't have the room. We just don't have the room. So we sell him because it's the right thing to do for the player, because what are we gonna put him like 10th on the rotation? There's no room. We are so overflowing. We're overflowing with talent. So that should be here for us. The goal to have so many players that we start selling. That and the reality is one of the reasons why Oscar was let go, as you guys have mentioned before, is the fact that he wasn't going to play the youth. So therefore, it makes absolutely no sense to spend all that money if we're not going to play the youth. And it's frustrating to see a lot of young talent that came from Orlando City Academy not playing here and being successful somewhere else. It irks me. But
Such as what's his face for Brazil that started at center back.
Oh, Leo
Leo
Pereira.
Pereira, listen,
Yeah.
listen. There's a Leo Pereira. I heard. I don't know if it's true. I heard that Jason Christ basically said you should dedicate yourself to do something else. You're not a real football player. Okay. We put him on an airplane. I remember Leo Pereira posting this picture of him sad, saying, "Bye, Orlando." And what has happened to Leo Pereira? Aside from lifting trophies, playing for the national team, being a superstar in Brazil, what has happened? And where's Jason Christ today? Jason Christ is probably at a Walmart working as a greeter or coaching at a YMCA. Again, this is what happens in the game of football. When you choose your manager, you are really choosing the identity of the club. And in Orlando, unfortunately, we had some duds where people came here and did a lot of damage that took years to clean up. That's what I don't understand. I don't understand. We stuck around with Oscar for 6 years, for better or worse. He left an imprint very, very deep into the club, and it's gonna take a few seasons to put us in track to do something else. And I'm not saying, listen, I have said it many times in the show. Oscar's a fantastic person. Love talking to him. We have met him in person. The members of the show have met him in person many, many, many times. Oscar, fantastic person. But as a manager, I felt, this is my opinion, that the league had moved on and his tactics were stale, that he had taken us as far as he could. And I have used the analogy of the leaders like Moses that take the people out of Egypt into the desert, and then Joshua takes us across the river into the promised land. And unfortunately, the leaders like Moses, they don't get to see the final product. They don't get to see the lifting of the trophy. It's the Joshua's, right? And that perhaps may be our future, where the foundation built by people like Inchi, people like Oscar, is what this new manager, this mystery man that we keep hearing, um, that he's gonna bring that foundation. And by the way, when we say build not bought, because it's another stupid Facebook controversy, what we're talking about is the support. The support. Uh, Today on social media, there was people killing themselves trying to get those Irish whiskey bottles with the
Oh,
Orlando
yeah.
City label.
Yeah.
This is a team that has won one game, that just lost 6-0, and their fans are driving all over Metro Orlando looking for these bottles.
All you got to say, David, is our two closest rivals, Miami and Atlanta. Look at the size of Miami supporter section, and and Atlanta doesn't have their own stadium. That's all
They
I
have
got to say.
empty seats. They had empty seats on their
Well,
opener.
can I say this about the kids too? And I think this is a point that we should touch on that I think we're missing a little bit. Is we're now getting to the generation with these academy kids, especially, and I think we lost a couple as well, unfortunately, is these kids bleed purple. And I don't
Yep.
think we're talking about that enough, is that they may not be as talented as some of the guys in front of them, but if they've got the passion and understand the culture of what this club is supposed to be about and have real pride for the badge because they've grown up here and since they were 5 years old have been watching Orlando City matches or whatever, to me, that's worth a little bit more on the field. And you've seen that so far this season with the first team a little bit, not too much, unfortunately, a little bit. But when you watch with OCB, you see it a lot, right? I mean, all three of us were at the OCB Inter Miami 2 game, and like those kids had no business coming back in that game. And they fought every single minute of that second half to get back into that game and do something. And sure, not every player on the field was an OC Academy kid, but like at this point, I count Harvey as one of them because he's ingratiated himself to those group of kids that have really come through the academy and bleed purple. Like you cut them on the grass, they bleed purple 100%. And like that's the kind of passion and culture that I'm sure Ricardo wants to see on the first team, right? That's the goal. So if your goal is to have that kind of culture of like guys like Antonio Carlos all the time, he reminds me of this. He used to kiss the badge all the time and say purple and all the other stuff. That's the passion and love that you're looking for the badge. And honestly, we just haven't had that in I can't tell you for how long. And like we've talked about,
time.
this team looks rudderless, right? And it's
David, you
Yeah, I mean, if you want a perfect example of the passion these guys have, and a lot of the guys that were on the U19 team in the Generation Adidas Cup last year that won the whole thing, are now on OCB. Some of them have senior team contracts. Look at the pride those guys had. You know, I mean, I'm getting emotional because it was emotional for me because of my son. When they won, they started singing Vamos Orlando, and my son started singing with them. That's the passion these guys have. You look at Taifi when he comes on. You look at Gusky when he comes on. You even Tyree Reed Brown, who looked as uncomfortable as a soccer player can look on a soccer pitch when he was on the senior team. But you could still see that passion. You know, I brought it up. I think it was on, I can't remember if it was on Extra Time or the main show. I think it was the Extra Time with Luke several weeks ago. It is exactly what you're saying. I was watching a montage of tackles from the 2000s, you know, your Sergio Ramos, Pepe, guys like that. And I showed her, I said, look at how these guys are tackling and their responses after winning these tackles. You know, almost like what Dorsey does to a point. To him, I feel like it's a little bit staged, you know, intentional. It's not just pure emotion. But you look at Antonio Carlos, for instance. He's probably the last guy I can think of that had that mentality with him. And he wasn't even, he came in here from Brazil or wherever he came from. He had nothing to do with our club until he got here. Mm-hmm. I know that sounds stupid, but you guys know what I'm saying. He wasn't from the academy. He wasn't from around Orlando. Nothing like that. And the dude makes a slide tackle, a 1v1 tackle that goes out for a throw. And he jumps up like he just made it the game-winning save in the World Cup. You look at Taifi in the season opener when he got that assist, his reaction to that assist. You look at Taifi when he comes on, and now I didn't watch the second half Saturday. I was over it. After they scored the fourth one because I can accept losing. I can't accept losing and looking like the majority of the players on the pitch don't care to be there. And that was our first half. I'm assuming when Taifi and Reed Brown came on in the second half, the mentality of the team changed a little bit. And from what I met him, Misael said yesterday, it did.
It did, 100%.
And you look at stuff like that. That's a 19 and a 21-year-old coming onto the pitch that has that big of a difference. Imagine if we started them. Imagine if Thomas, who is off the pitch, away from the match, is as nice of a human being, from what I could tell, that you could ever find. Soft-spoken, not really loud, you know, one of the greatest smiles, honestly, I've ever seen. And for those that have seen him on the marketing stuff when he was here, you know what I mean. He even had that intensity when he played for OCB. So you bring these guys in and you have these guys, you know, that go like my son, for instance, that bleed it. It's a part of them. You know, Ahmed's son's a perfect example. Yes, he plays for OC South, but he's still a part of the system. You know, you get the guys that have parents that go to this team and care for this team, you know, to the extent that we do, which, you know, they have to because of all the travel that's involved and all that. They have to be invested in it. So the player, you know, obviously the players when they're young don't see the money part. Yeah. They just see, oh, I'm here playing soccer, this great thing. And then they fall in love with the badge. And that's the problem, I feel like, especially the last 2 years we've had, whether we've been winning or losing, is the players that wear the uniform that start the game don't understand the weight that badge has.
Well, and I'll say this, John, real quick. I think this is, we talked about the U22s earlier. I think because of their age and how they're being brought in, they're a similar group of guys that can start to feel that after 6 months or a season, right? Because a lot of these guys haven't played a ton at the professional level. Like, sure, of course, they're always going to have their home teams. Otavio's always going to have Internacional. Iago's always going to have Flamengo. Tiago's going to always have Bahia. But like all these guys, from what I've seen so far and what I've heard about them, is that they're really trying to buy in to the understanding of what is Orlando about? What do we talk about when we talk about bleeding purple? And what do we talk about leaving it all on the field? Otavio was another one who came onto the game, which I know a lot of people have been ragging on this kid, which I think is unjustified. They've come in and he came in and he had probably one of the better performances I've seen out of him in the 23 minutes or 24 minutes he was on the pitch. He had 2 shots that were just rippers that Lloris has been standing on his head all season. He's been really good so far. He shows how world class he was, right? But Otavio came in and he changed the game. And what's funny about it is he didn't change the game as really a 6. He came in and played more as like a box to box guy. Like he was getting pretty far forward, and then he let Brian Ojeda kind of just patrol and do his thing in midfield, which is where he should have been the whole time. But again, we talk about this every week. The injection of this youth and how it changes the game. Why don't we want to start games that way? I don't understand why you wouldn't want to go into a game and say, hey, if Taifi's giving me 130% on the field, and sure, maybe he's a half step back from skill level of a Dorsey or of a Marin or whatever, I'd take the passion over the half a step of skill. Like the other thing that I think is unfair is people keep talking about Taifi getting bodied on that Nashville goal or whatever. Guys, he's a kid. He's gonna get better. He's gonna make mistakes. Like we've seen Marin himself get bodied. We've seen grown men get bodied.
I don't understand that, brother. If grown men body a teenager, I mean a kid that should be in high school. Come on. That one of the things I wanted to mention is the kids that were born on our first year of USL are 15 years old now. The kids that were born when we enter MLS are 11 years old now. Those guys are in the academy, by the way. There's actual people that can say, I was born an Orlando City fan. And we have seen the video of Taifi as a fan trying to get Kyle Aaron to sign his jersey. And we had other players like Benjamin Shell, and his name escapes me right now, the Colombian kid that played in the academy and played for us. But we already had several players that with ties here. And also, what speaks volumes of our fan base and our organization is the amount of players that have retired and have stayed in Orlando. There's about a dozen of them that have stayed here. That have, there's people working like regular jobs. Obviously, Tally Hall is the famous one because he's a police officer. But the fact of the matter is that those people remain here because they felt something outside of just the football passion. We as a community need to understand we're not a major city, we're not a major metropolis. We're a small city in the scheme of Americana. We only have a metro area of 3 million people, and that's very small compared to the 7 million down south, or perhaps the 12 million that LA has, or the 48 million that New York City has. So you have to understand that the level of passion, the level of commitment, this is all new to us as a community. I remember before Orlando City, there was nothing that glued us together. You went to Magic games, everybody was repping the teams from back home. You go to a game in Tampa or in Jacksonville or in Miami, is the same thing. Orlando City is our first thing that get us together. Where people like John, their hometown gets an MLS team, it doesn't matter because I'm purple till the day I die. So
Well, and David, that's one of the things that, like, I was thinking, and we'll get back on topic and get to what we want to see in the summer here in a minute. But it's interesting you brought me up because, it doesn't make sense that myself is as intense for Orlando City as I am. I can't stand UCF and their fans. Could care less for the Magic. Could care less for the Florida Gators. Every other team I root for is the Cincinnati Reds, the Ohio State Buckeyes in college football, and Xavier University in basketball. And then I guess I follow the Bengals and make fun of them when they lose and enjoy it when they win. But when I moved here in August of 2012, so during our inaugural season. So I haven't known Orlando without Orlando City. I went to my first match in 2013. I haven't known living here without Orlando City, and I love living here. You know, I joke that me and Brienne should be spokespeople for living in Orlando because she has family in South Carolina. All my family still lives up north, and they're like, "Oh, you should move here. It's so much cheaper." And this and they're like, we look at where they live, and they're like, "What do you guys do when you're not working?" But that's where my passion comes from, and now it's down to my son. And you both have seen it. I mean, David Valentin's seen it at senior matches, and they both saw it at the Inter Miami 2 OCB match. They could hear him on the pitch screaming "F Miami," and make your judgments of what you want. But we sit in the supporter section. We go to Orlando City games. The kid's going to learn how to cuss just going to the games. And eventually he's going to learn how to cuss anyway. He knows he's only allowed to do it at Orlando City games, and he lets it all out. You could tell that when at the OCB match. So, it comes to a point where you have to, as a club, in the front office, at least this is my opinion, you have to weigh, do we want to have these guys like a Dorsey in here that on paper is better? Or, somebody like a Marin who on paper is better? Or do we want to start a Taifi who's younger, has a little bit higher ceiling, and just has the intensity with him? Intensity gets you a very long way.
Well, let me say this, John. I think we're at a crossroads now, because now that we're looking to replace our manager, and now that Ricardo is really getting his stamp on everything now, I think we're at a fork in the road. I think the decision has to be, and it's going to fall on Ricardo because he's the CSO, but it's going to be one of those things where it's like, are you going to rely on your youth more often? And with this manager that you bring in, kind of say, hey, we've got a factory of an academy that we're really starting to pump out talent of now. We need you to find a way to utilize that, whether that's for depth, whether that's for your starting positions, whatever that might be. And again, we struck gold with Alex Freeman. We're not going to get that every single year, but every couple years we're going to get something, pretty good, right? Maybe not to the Freeman level, but pretty good, right? And I personally think Taifi is that. Again, I'm a little biased because I've watched a lot of his games, and I've had the opportunity to speak to him in his camp before and things like that. So, fine, whatever. But it's either that choice, or is the choice going to be, nope, I'm just going to go to the Wilfs. We're going to spend money. We're going to fill it from the league. We're going to fill it from South America. We're going to fill it from these places. And if we get one that strikes gold, great, we'll bump them up and do what we need to do. But it'll just be something that maybe every once in a while we sell straight out of the academy, like a Granados, like other people like that. We got money for the goalkeeper that went to Colorado
Yes.
for him as well.
There,
So, is it something like that? Because, again, if I'm one of the kids, Caraballo, Taifi, Reed Brown, even if I'm Judelson, Justin Ellis, we know we had difficulties getting a contract for. I might start looking at my other options. If I'm not seeing playing time at the top team, I might be going to my agent saying, hey, just get me a Granados deal. Sell me somewhere where I can at least go get playing time, because it's not going to be here. And to those fans that have been following these guys, and again, I followed OCB casually last year is probably the best way for me to put it. I've always kind of followed them casually. I followed them more often last year than I did. But this year, as you guys know, I have followed them religiously this year, even put out stuff about them, right? These kids, they've got talent, number one, but secondly, why go through all this? Like David said before, we're spending millions of dollars in the academy. Why spend millions of dollars in the academy and then not use it for yourself? I understand you want to reap a reward eventually, but and some of them you maybe can just sell, and that's fine. But these guys need to contribute and want to contribute. So give them the opportunity to go contribute. So I'd be really interested to see what Ricardo's kind of final decision is of how do we balance the academy with bringing people in? Because now the fan base with Griezmann coming in are shifting to what other stars can we bring in? And the more stars we bring in, the less opportunity there is for these kids to potentially get on the field. If Martial ends up being an addition, and again, I'm not the highest on him, and it is what it is, but let's say we bring in somebody like a Koke, right? And he comes here and he plays 2 years with Griezmann. That just blocks Judelson and Gusky, right? Just a fact. It blocks those two guys. And so you have to start putting in your head what that might look like.
Now, a counterpoint to that, David, that I would make is with somebody like Griezmann and the stories we've heard about him and the way he's involved with Atletico Madrid's academy and all that is, with the age these guys are, and you see in Europe a lot of the guys that are their age that do get time on the senior team come off the bench, play your, open cup matches, or FA Cup matches, whatever, especially in the early rounds. And, eventually they either get to the senior, starting level on the senior team or get sold. I hope that's kind of what Ricardo's plan is we have a, basically 2-year window now, with Griezmann here. Use this 2 years, bring in some stars, continue to bring in a star here and there after him, obviously, but bring him here, have him bring, some of his buddies, and this goes right into what I wanted our last topic to be. Bring in some of his buddies, which, he may or may not be wanting to do, and have them in here to set an example for those young players, to teach them the professionalism and how it's done on that on that stage. Bring that level of training, that intensity of the daily training that those guys would bring, and show these young guys how they do it. So, and then, maybe, and, instead of Gusky having to start when he's, 19 this year, start games and be a critical piece for us when he's 19, maybe he comes in and, and plays significant minutes coming off the bench, and he starts playing as, and becomes a certain bona fide starter as a 21-year-old, or even like a Taifi, or, imagine Ellis backing Griezmann up. Very similar players in the style, not skill, but the style. Imagine Ellis following Griezmann around for the 2 years like a shadow. And imagine what that would do for Ellis's career, whether it's here or somewhere else. And that's, to me, that's what I'm kind of hoping to see, is them bring in some of these players that, are in their, maybe just a little bit past their prime, not to the extent that Miami's bringing them in where it's their last 2 years of ever playing, but bring them in where they're, between 29 and 33, because 34 seems to be the new 30 anymore. 34 is Griezmann's age now. Where I feel like 10 years ago, you brought a 30-year-old in and he was washed. But you bring in somebody that's, a little bit past their prime, later stage of their prime, late 20s, 28, 29, early 30s, and you integrate them into Orlando City, and to me, you do it twofold. You do it for the immediate success, hopefully, but to me, that more guarantees future success with setting the standard, kind of like what we almost did with Nani. Think about the stories we hear about what Nani changed in the club for the 3 years he was here, 2.5 years he was here.
Yeah. Well, and I think John, I think what makes it interesting, and this is the next step before we get back to like what we're looking for in the summer and things like that, is, it'll be interesting to see which one of his sort of friends he picks up the phone and calls, because I would hope that, to your point, like, so far I've loved what I've seen from Griezmann. I've loved what I read about Griezmann, the whole 9 yards. I would hope that he brings over players that are in the same vein of what he's doing, right? Maybe a little bit younger, like you said, to benefit a little bit more, to get some more time out of them and things like that, right? But maybe he calls up a guy that also, like, sees the value of taking a couple young guys under his wing. And maybe it also doesn't put so much on Griezmann to be like, hey, you need to share this wealth with everybody, right? Maybe he brings in another guy who can help him do those kind of things. So I think it'd be really interesting to kind of see what that kind of looks like, because I think either way, and this is kind of the feeling I am, and I think it's a good transition into what we look for in the summer, I personally think Pasalic is probably gone either way. Whether that's he balls out at the World Cup and we sell him and we get a really nice fee for him, or that's a, hey guys, I think I'm just done here. I'd like to go back to Europe and find a way to kind of settle back into Europe. I think it's very unlikely, because a lot of fans were getting really like, kind of like meerkat, like, oh, he could be bought down, he could be a TAM guy. I just don't think it's ever going to be an option for us, because I don't think he sticks around long enough for that to happen. And so it would open up a spot for that sort of high-level, high-profile friend of Griezmann's who would want to come over and play with him, which would be really interesting to kind of see how we fill that. But somebody like Martial, right? Who, again, I know he's had issues with Monterrey and his form's been bad and all that kind of stuff, but he's a guy you could get in for TAM and you're not using a DP spot on him. And I would argue he's probably a level or two up, even in this sort of weird part of his career right now, that maybe somebody like Griezmann could also inspire him to start balling out again, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's the potential there for that to happen. And there could be a few guys that do that. But going to the summer, John, I don't know what you were going to ask us about it, but I kind of have a wish list. I'm sure you guys do too, in terms of what you're looking for.
Yeah, just basically, I kind of prefaced it a little bit, just what the type of player. Obviously, the givens are there. We need a left back. We need a bona fide center back. I think we only need one center back, honestly. Because right now, hopefully, Janssen comes back and is basically the same player. But I think either way, we'll be okay with just getting one. Because as high as I was on Brecalo, it's almost completely shifted. I thought he was the center back that we were going to have for the next several years when we brought him in, and he's just never shown that. He had a good year last year as a left back, very solid year as a left back. And then for whatever reason this year they're not putting him in that left back spot. So I think if we can find somebody to kind of step in and take his place, whether that means selling him or what have you, I think bringing one in, one in, and then next year Iago, or whenever Iago's kind of found his groove and he's able to step in and take Janssen's place, I think that really helps. But I was more talking about like the type of player. If you want to see Pasalic bought down or sold, what position you would want to see take that DP spot. Do we want to keep using it on wingers and strikers, or maybe do we want to get a former world class midfielder? Something like that. Just kind of a grand outlook, not very minute detailed of what you want to see in the summer.
I'll let DV kind of lead it off because I've got some thoughts, but I'm curious to see what he's thinking.
Well, I'm gonna make it very simple. We gotta go get people that fit the following criteria. This is as a general, and then I'll talk about the DPs. Number one, we want people that want to come play for Orlando. Simple. We don't need Orlando to be a paycheck. We don't need Orlando to be a project. You want to be here in Orlando. Let's just put it that way. Second, people that want to win. People that want to win. And third, people who are passionate and are willing to be mentors to others. Nani, through different channels I have heard, he was such a presence and he pushed the players so hard that even Ricardo in an interview said when he left, some people in this club, I don't know if he was throwing shade when he said this, probably breathe a sigh of relief. And that's exactly what we need. We need people that want to do that. Now, to quote our great friend Cleon from Orlando Lions, then he said this on passing. I keep quoting him every single time I get the opportunity. DPs should be A, starters, B, game changers, and C, goal scorers. We need people to score goals. If you don't score goals, you don't win games. So I feel that whoever comes in the summer window, and again, if there's people that don't want to be here, wish them well, pack their bags, put them on an airplane. I do not fall in love with players. And again, another member of Orlando Lions, and my good friend Eddie has said many times that the problem with this fan base is they go meet these players at a Metro PCS or a Publix. They put their hands around them, they call them buddy, they take a picture, and all of a sudden, people are willing to close of committing violence to defend the honor of these players. Listen, the reality is players and managers come and go, the supporter remains, and that's to me that's the culture shift that we need to have. Listen. Football at the end of the day is entertainment. We pay a premium to go be entertained and have a good time. When I saw you guys at the OCB game, I had a great time. I had a blast, and we were losing. But I'm spending time with friends. I'm interacting with people that I never met. The family that was next to us. They were very gracious, very nice folks. I believe the gentleman was a capo for the Rockets. So, the reality is it was a lot of fun. We had the news of Griezmann breakout that line up the mood, and we made that comeback. First time seeing an Olympico in my life live, and that at the end of the day, that's what it is go let's go have fun and be entertained. But nobody's gonna pay a premium for losing. So we need to steer the ship into a winning organization. What made me fall in love with Orlando City in USL? I'm gonna tell you what it was. It was the people that surrounded me, the culture, the fact that our owner at the time, Phil, will go on radio, on TV, on podcasts, and always drum up the support, get people excited. People, wanted to chew cardboard just to be at the games and see us win. We need to recapture that. The people that were here, with Kay retiring, the old guard is gone. It's up to us, the people who they mentor, the people who they planted the passion for football, the people who never got into sports, and all of a sudden you see them decked out in purple, head to toe on game day. Those are the people that now have to pick up the banner and move forward. And the players that come in have to exemplify exactly that. I want culture people. And we can throw names all we want. I'm assuming that Griezmann is going to be a fantastic recruiting tool, and I am assuming that he's going to be bringing a lot of friends, and just like Miami was Barca Junior, we're probably going to be Atleti two, or whatever the name people come up with, and probably people are going to be angry and whatever. The fact is, my friends, and I finish with this, is that whatever happens in the summer, I trust Ricardo, I trust his vision. Again, you can call me a brown noser, you can call, a hype man, whatever it is. I have seen enough from this man and what he wants to do, that I am, I'm closing my mouth. I'm not going crazy on social media. I'm just letting it play it out. And you guys can post all the stupidity you want on social media. You know me, I will let you do whatever. You know, but at the and I'll give you this one for free. I'm not going to be showing screenshots, and I'm not going to tell people I told you so, and I'm going to be gloating. I'm going to be hugging you, throwing warm backwash beer on top of you when we lift that trophy, because that's what is going to matter when we lift that trophy. I don't care about winning petty, stupid internet arguments, because I believe and the vision that is laid out in front of us. It's going to cost a lot of money, and it's going to cost a lot of time. You can jump on the boat now, or you can pay a premium later on when the tickets are going to be $200 for that MLS Cup that we're going to win here.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm kind of on the same mind length as John. Is I think and we've already heard it from Ricardo. He says he's going to address the defense and all that kind of stuff. I think the first thing you have to do is you have to, and I've hit Ricardo for this. And again, anything I say about Ricardo, the front office, is never personal, and I think they understand that. It's just a mindset that I have of like, hey, you lost. It's just one of those things. Not having a replacement for Dusan Stojinovic was a mistake. Like, we didn't have a replacement for him. The goal, from what I understand, was to always bring in Iago and Dusan at the same time. They wanted a guy with seasoned experience and then a young guy who could learn behind this group of Janssen, Brekalo, Stojinovic, the whole 9 yards, right? So I think the thing you have to do in the summer is you have to make that right. So I think you need to bring in a seasoned center back that you think is going to partner well with Janssen now, with the hope that he partners well with Iago later, right? So that's kind of the mindset that you kind of have to be in. Unfortunately, in MLS, you don't splash money on a DP center back, and I'm not advocating for that. But I would say that if they do want to go out and get a sort of higher TAM center back, I'm okay with that if you're getting quality out of it, right? You need to get the right quality out of it. But again, if we can find sort of to Janssen's Antonio Carlos, that similar type of like when they had that really lockdown kind of defense, that's what I'm looking for with that. I'm in the same boat at left back. I don't know if Reed Brown's going to be it. I still think he needs more time to mature a little bit. I'm not saying he's completely out of it, but I think that's something that you need to address. Marin hasn't even been my biggest issue on the season, but again, I'm not sold that he's the guy to really take over that spot. So I think you bring somebody in. And then again, if the rumors, are true that our new manager might have a different playing style, like a different formation, let's say, you would need a different profile left back anyway, because Marin's not going to get the job done for you if you're playing a back three, let's say, right? Unless he's one of the three in the back, and right now I don't see that for him. What I will say, and I think this might surprise some people, is if Wilder Cartagena continues to be injured in the middle of the park, I think you have to get a serious destroyer that's seasoned in the middle of the park. And I don't know if you do it in this window. I think it just depends on how Cartagena's progression is the rest of the year. But I'm starting to believe that 1+1 for Wilder was probably done with the right mentality, right? I'm a big fan of Wilder Cartagena. I've loved his game, especially when he's on. He's been one of our best sort of destroyers. But if Father Time is catching up on that dude and the injury bug is gonna nip him, there's not much you can do about that. We've already said Atuesta doesn't seem like he's it. I'm not saying that the club's going to give up on Atuesta, but he clearly is not playing the right role that we're asking him to play. So I think there's value in potentially adding a seasoned midfielder. Again, not saying DP. I know Casemiro has been linked to every Tom, Dick, and Harry across the world, right? So, and we're Brazilian, so maybe he does get linked to us. I don't know. Am I going to complain if Casemiro comes here? Hell no. I'd be stupid to complain about that. But again, I don't know that this team uses its DP spot for Casemiro. I just don't see how that would connect. Now, going to the front line, because I think that's really where the question becomes, if this team goes to a 3-5-2, we don't play with our traditional 10, right? I'm not sure if our next manager is going to play with our traditional 10 in that role, so that leaves Tincho in a weird spot, right? I think the most natural thing is you put him out left, at left wing, you let him play out there and drift and do what he wants to do out there, but then you end up with Angulo, who doesn't really have a spot. So either he has to shift back a line and play as a wing back, which I think Angulo could do well at, depending on if he gets the right coaching, or you find another solution there and figure out what you're going to do. I think the third DP spot ends up being one of two things. It's either a right winger to replace Pasalic, who's a little bit more dynamic than what Pasalic has been able to give us, or it is a striker who can play well with Antoine Griezmann, who can just bang in goals. You don't need to worry about, whether they're going to score or not. And I'm not talking about like a Latte Louth type, because look how badly that's gone for Atlanta. I'm talking about a guy who can not only score goals, but can also create for himself when he needs to create for himself. Because unfortunately, the issue with Duncan Maguire so far this year has been he's so reliant on service. It was the same thing with Erkan Kara. It was the same thing with a few of our strikers in the past. They just couldn't create anything for themselves. And this team clearly isn't going to give that striker enough service to go do that. So we need what we should have gotten out of Luis Muriel, that we didn't get out of Luis Muriel, is a guy who can not only score goals, but can create and make opportunities for himself or Griezmann. If you give Griezmann the right partner next to him, that makes you the most lethal duo in the league if you can find that person who can play well, which Atletico Madrid has been struggling with all season to find the right partner for Griezmann because he doesn't really start for them.
In other words, another Kevin Molino.
Yeah, and it's like, he's played with Lukman, and he's played with Alvarez, and he's played with Slouth, and the partnerships have been all over the place. But that's what I think you need to do, and what John has said earlier about utilizing Griezmann for the 2 years that you have him for. You've got to find the exact right partner for him right now. Like, that's the goal, is you go out and you find him the right partner to play next to him, because I do think the 3-5-2 for this team, or any variation on that, you can pick your poison as to what it looks like, a 3-4-3 or whatever it's going to be, right? Pick your poison. I think that's what you end up spending the DP spot on. Now, again, I could be convinced into somebody like a Casemiro or somebody of that nature, but to me, they'd have to be truly, like, still world-class adjacent, right? Like, you're not bringing in a very good DP central midfielder. You need to bring somebody who's at another level of central midfielder. And so I think it's less likely that it ends up happening. But I think, again, it's not just the high part of the roster, right? It's not just the DP spot that you could potentially have. You need to still bolster the defensive line. You need to also add a little bit more spice, I think, to the midfield. And then more than anything, I think you need to make a decision on your goalkeeper situation. I don't think Crépeau has convinced anybody so far this season. I don't think Javier Otero has convinced anybody this season. So I think you have to also make a choice of, do you try to go in and find a higher quality veteran and spend capital on that? Or do you hope that Otero eventually figures it out? Or the next season afterwards, you show Crépeau the door and Tristan Himes is your guy, and he dukes it out with Otero. I don't know. That's a question the club's going to have to ask itself.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I just looked because I thought I remembered it being right. The interesting thing that I have is, you talked about the formation, is with the way the roster is right now, if we did play with three center backs, almost every way we played with three center backs, Angulo would be left out, which last year I didn't have a problem with. This year he's been one of the few semi-bright spots on the team. Because if you play like a 5-3-2 attacking, you then create a spot for Tincho to play, kind of that 8/10, more attacking midfielder. And then you can still have two holding center backs, which would fit what we have on the team right now outside of Atuesta. Because I think that's Atuesta's biggest issue, kind of to defend him a little bit, even though he's shown a big lack of intensity this year, is he, and we talked about it on the show when he came in last year, he's more of an 8. He's more of an attacking 8. He's not a Wilder Cartagena who enjoys playing defense like Wilder looks like he enjoys it. So I think, if we do bring in a manager, which things that I'm hearing, it sounds like it's going to be a manager that prefers to play with some way of three center backs. That, it would be something where we would need to bring in a left wing back. We already have one in Dorsey. And Taifi can play wing back or right full back as well, and actually he would probably excel better as a wing back than a full back because of his physical characteristics. And it with who we bring in, kind of like David G said, it's when you have a player like Griezmann paying him the amount that we're paying him annually, he's going to have a little bit of a say in it. And the thing that I like about Griezmann over somebody like, Messi down south, is Griezmann seems to want to do what's best for the team. Everything we've heard him say, even before he was signed here, when we were first linked with him, doing research on him, it seems like when he left Atleti and went to Barcelona, he really learned a lot about himself, which is part of the reason he came back to Atletico Madrid. So, I think I think he wants to do what's right by this club based on the time that Ricardo spent. You don't spend nearly a year recruiting somebody for it to be the wrong fit and to not match up with what you want the club to be. And we've heard Ricardo, like we've said a couple times tonight, want to change the culture, want to really build an identity here in the club, and build a culture of winning in the club. And, if Griezmann buys into that and is going to be a part of that, he's also going to have a say in who we bring in. And I really, as much as I love Duncan, I really don't think he's going to fit with what Griezmann would prefer to play with. When you play with, what seems like we're going to be playing with two strikers, Griezmann will be one. He'll be kind of the false nine, if you will. You really need, a true target man to be the second one, ideally, especially with the ball skill that Griezmann has. So, I see us bringing somebody in. I know talking to David G, and, we're just speculating, somebody like Lukaku, big guy, even a Kara, not saying we're bringing him in, But Kara would have been a perfect fit for Griezmann the way he played. Somebody that's, him, that has that makeup. Now the question comes is, do we spend, if either we bypass Lich down, which I think is the least likely option, or I really think he's going somewhere no matter what, after the World Cup, is do we spend that DP on a second striker, and then kind of we put all of our eggs in one basket in the attack? So or I talked to Luke about it. I think David G. I brought it up to you a little bit. Is I really think MLS teams with the with Pep Ball kind of being what this game's gravitating towards and wanting to play out of the back, I really think MLS teams need to start looking a little bit more at midfielders for the designated player. Maybe I'm out there, and I'm not saying put all three of your designated players as midfielder, because again, that's putting all your eggs in one basket. But I'm not even saying Casemiro, because I'm not the biggest Casemiro fan anyway. I think the guy's a little bit of a nut job. I don't think culturally he would fit into what Ricardo's trying to do. But, and I'm just putting this out there as a name, Rodri's contract ends next summer. And I'm not saying sit on the designated player spot for that long, but look for somebody. Now Rodri's only 2 years removed from winning the Ballon d'Or, but look for somebody that is close to that quality, and see if he can come in on a TAM deal. And if he can't, we have this extra designated player spot that we can pick you up on, and it be that 2 levels above what a Brian Ojeda is. And I'm just saying that for argument's sake, since technically he's our third designated player as it stands. That's just my personal. If I had the chips and was playing poker with them, kind of what I would do. Obviously, the given is a combination of what both of you said. That leader, kind of to back up Griezmann and kind of be Ricardo's voice in the locker room, if you will. Somebody that'll kind of be like a co-captain, if you will, to what Griezmann's saying to rally the troops. I honestly see it being somebody. I know I said from a broad view, but to get very specific, our second biggest signing this summer is going to be somebody that has South American roots, so there's that cohesion. We have a European player as the head guy. We have a South American player to kind of hit on all sides, to have that leadership there, so that the locker room isn't split. I mean, I don't know what you guys heard when Anthony Carlos left, but that's part of the reason Anthony Carlos, he had personal reasons, but that also was a secondary, very distant secondary motivating factor, was the nature of the locker room. And, so we need to get that locker room back. And that's the first step, because that shows on the field from the first kickoff. And, get players in here, like David Valentin said, that want to play here, not players that are just playing here for a paycheck like Muriel was. And also get players that have a resume. I'm tired of us getting these designated players that we're taking a risk on, like a Cara, like an Ojeda, and Tincho worked out, but like a Tincho Ojeda, that we're kind of yes, he did well in South America, but he hasn't really done anything outside of South America, and we're bringing him in as a designated player, and then he sat the bench for nearly 2 seasons.
Yeah, and not to beat a dead horse, but this fan base need faces. Meaning, who do we follow? Where in the early days, it was Inchi, it was Phil, it was Kay, Rob Valentino, Jamie Watson, Miguel Gallardo. Who do we follow? Who is out here to lead the troops to hell and back? Right now, it's difficult to say. Whoever's our next manager has to be a person that is going to say the right things on the microphone. And I'm not talking about pandering. The fans are too smart for that. We need people that call it as it is, encourage the people. I remember when Adrian Heath in 2015 said, "Hey, We're playing New York City at home on Saturday. We need 50,000 people in the stands because we're pushing towards playoffs, and we won the game, and there was 50,000 people there. We have lost this power
He
of.
did the same thing in 15 when we played Montreal towards the end of the season.
Thank you, my brother. So we have to once again have someone that is a drawing force to the stadium. Obviously, Antoine Griezmann is going to be bringing a lot of eyes, just like Messi and all the other big names from Europe. But we need a manager that will encourage the players and make them believe that they can do beyond their capability. We need our own version of Ted Lasso. And on top of that, we need players that go out there and translate the sweat equity into wins. If we start scoring goals, we start becoming fun to watch again. And again, I had great times, even in losses, if the team plays well. Um, if we manage to do that, then everything pays for itself. Everything falls into place. Because at the end of the day, once again, for those that are new to the game of football, club football is different. This is not national team. This is not superstars. It's a lot of peaks and valleys, a lot of disappointment, a lot of hard times, and you are here to support. And the payout is if your team manages to get into the good times and manages to lift a trophy. It means a ton. I sat in July of 2018 with next to a family from England. It was like, and I have told the story 1,000 times. If you heard it, sorry, I'm gonna say it again. It was basically, it was like 10 men. To me, it looked like the brother-in-laws and the son-in-laws and the sons of this gentleman. And he sat next to me, and we were talking about the game and all that. We won. It was the second victory, and only two victories for James O'Connor that year. And I remember saying, him telling me, the reason why when trophies are lifted, all the players have to do it is because inside that trophy, inside that cup, there's the tears of the fans and the sweat of the players. And the longer you wait, the heavier it's gonna be. So to me, we can spend hours upon hours of what has gone wrong. We have to decide that we're gonna be positive, and we have to decide that we want to give our support to the people that can change things. I can't, even if I wish upon a star really, 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 really hard. I can't. I just pay for my ticket. I go to the games. Ricardo Moreira and his staff and the people in the front office need to understand that what they have in their hands is our hopes and our hearts and our love and affection for the club. They work for us. Everything, if the pandemic taught us anything, is that without the fans, without the supporters, without our voices and our money, it's just 22 men kicking a ball. That's all there is. That what makes football what it is the people in those terraces where we're all equal. It doesn't matter if you're a surgeon or you're a janitor. You all have the opportunity to pay the same price, sit in the same seats, and see the same product, wear the same merch, and cheer on the boys to win. So my encouragement to you guys now is tonight. I think we have done a fantastic job at laying out the vision of the club, what the club wants to do, where we've been, where we're going. But you need to understand, if you're new to the game, you're new to the sport, that these situations are gonna happen. Who knows? We may go to the top of Space Mountain in this, and then players move on. Ricardo moves on. We suck again, and then the cycle continues. That's how it is. Do not think that just because X team is better now, that doesn't mean that tomorrow bad things are not going to happen to them. Football is cyclical and organic. And the way we close the show, the little sayings of football is a pound of talent and also luck, and it's not played on paper, it's played on all those things is things that I formulated when we created the show, based on my experience and my belief system of what football should be. And I think they have proved themselves right over the years. And I encourage everybody to just stay positive and to hope. Like I said, hope that our leadership is going to steer us in the right direction. That's all we have as football fans and supporters of the club. we have hope. And if I can quote Ted Lasso, that's what kills you, right?
Yeah, I'll say this as sort of a closing thought on sort of my thoughts on it. I think John's right in that the second DP, if we get the opportunity to fill it, if Paslich moves on, I think they probably end up having some kind of South American connection. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they have a dual connection, like maybe they were in Europe at some point and now they're back in South America, or they're from South America and they're coming from Europe. But just having that bit of connection to kind of connect with the youth that we have in this team, I think it would be a huge benefit if they're probably like Brazilian or Argentinian or one of those kind of things, because then we could really see the sort of connection and them being taken under their wing. But let me say this as well, is, you know, obviously for those of you that watch in 90 Minutes or LPO or Lions Den or whatever show that you might watch out there, you know, it's okay to question and challenge the leadership of the club when things are going awry, right? We're not here telling you should never question, you should never challenge, you should just take things at face value. What we're saying in this instance, though, is that the man himself, through various different mediums, has said, hey, we might have misjudged the beginning of the season, but we're really pushing for the summer to be our tent pole of where this turnaround is going to start to happen. So if he's going to say that to us, and this is sort of his first, kind of, to me, his first big declaration of like, okay, this is what we're shooting for, this is what we're pushing for, and we've heard this through our sources and through our friends like JJ and other people like that, we have to give them the benefit of the doubt and the opportunity to go do that, right? This window's closed. There's nothing else we can do right now. It's closed. We can't add players. We can't do anything. This team is who this team is right now, right? The only solace that you should be taking from this is Robin Janssen is supposed to be back soon, as is Wilder Cartagena, and I'm hoping that that adds a level of leadership and skill and the whole 9 yards. But what I will say is this. If we get out of the summer and these moves turn out to be disastrous, and Griezmann's not who we think he is, and all this other stuff, by all means, we'll be the first three saying things as soon as we come out of the break, going, hey, Ricardo, what happened? Because this team has to figure out a way to make it work. We can't sit here and give him more windows and more windows and more windows. We gave him the summer window last year, which was really his sort of first window, and he was trying to get under his feet as being the main guy for the first time. The winter window was his first big one. This summer one will also be a big one for that. After those three windows, to me, that's where the true analysis can come of like, did this work? Did this not work? Did this not? I understand people are already out on this guy, and there are people out there that are saying, you got to clean the whole house, and he's got to go too, and the whole 9 yards. I'm not there. This guy waited for this opportunity. He turned down other opportunities to take this opportunity. He has ingratiated himself to the fan base as much as a CSO possibly can. He's going to continue to try to communicate with not just us, but with fans across the club. You have to give him a little bit of faith for just that, right? So you've got to see it through and see what it looks like. If he makes the wrong manager hire, if he doesn't bring in extra help to help Griezmann, if he doesn't shore up the defense, by all means, get the tomatoes out, guys. I mean, at that point, there's not much else you can do. But if he goes out there and gets the manager that he wants and that these sort of fans want as well, and again, with that as well, you're going to have to give the new manager time. So you can't just give him a week. You're going to have to give him weeks of development and tactics and all that. But again, when you bring in a new player to put next to Griezmann, when you go and shore up the defense, then we can have conversations like that and we can talk about it. So that's kind of like my last salvo of that, of like, you can't bring out the pitchforks at this point. You got to give him one more big window if he's telling us that he thinks the summer is where it's going to happen.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I was going to wrap it up by saying that, you know, in my opinion, and others have said it too, is it takes 3 transfer windows to complete a rebuild. So, you know, and he had the one back in January. He kind of did the building block pieces with the 3 young Brazilians, in my opinion. And that's what the January transfer window is anyway, in general, is it's getting pieces. The big signings, the marquee signings really happen in the summer. And I really look for us, you know, to start to see the turnaround, as David G said, in the summer. Well, I think if everything even goes, you know, C plus, we'll see that turnaround start, and we'll start making a push for playoffs. I mean, like I said it in the main show, we have 19 matches when we come back in the summer. That's a lot of matches to come back and to try to win. Whereas usually that's we're at 19 matches by the middle of or end of June.
And
Anyway,
don't forget too the possibility of being in an Open Cup if you continue to progress in the Open Cup, and then Leagues Cup, which I'm not up on, but you do have
no,
the opportunity to potentially win Leagues Cup.
yeah. So I really, even if half the pieces we bring in, obviously the manager has to hit, but half the pieces as far as players on the pitch are concerned hit and perform. You know, I think we start making a push, and then you'll really see the window turn when we find those last two or three pieces in the January transfer window, and then that brings in a month later the mini season that I really think if everything goes right, we have a very good chance of competing for, and then the full season starts in July of 27. Where it's the new schedule. So it's amazing just saying that how fast time moves sometimes. Because you get to next July, that's a whole nother three transfer windows away at this point, and a lot
And
can change.
yeah, no, and my final thoughts on this. Again, we should be charging consultant fees at this point. All three of us, pretty much all the podcasters. What I would love to see from Mark and from Ricardo is for them to produce a video, some sort of communication where they're talking to the fans and addressing their concerns, and do some damage control and tell
Or real
people.
quick, David, not to
You're
cut
right.
you off, even do it on the television show that they have on Saturday mornings now.
Oh, I didn't even know there was a show. Where? What
Yeah.
channel?
They used to have it on oh, what's the channel? The channel that used to have our matches,
35, 27, 9. Those are the only ones.
27 or whatever it
I think it was
was. Yeah,
27. Yeah,
yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
I believe it's on Wesh now.
Okay.
I want to say
Okay.
Channel 6.
Okay. They
Um,
also posted online too if you don't watch
yeah,
it like live. So
it's
Okay. Great.
Ricardo and I can't think of the
Alan,
radio guy.
Adam Weston.
it's
Yeah,
Weston and Gallardo. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Oh, okay.
And
Yeah,
they
I
go
know what
over
you're
the
talking
week
about.
in Orlando City with the Pride and the main club. Just
Nice.
something like on there once a month would even be cool.
Yeah.
But go ahead, David.
No, no.
Sorry.
Thank you for sharing that. I was completely in the dark with that. No, I just feel that they need to address the fans. They need to address the fans. I think if you don't take ownership of the narrative, then you are leaving it to podcasters. You're leaving it to Purple Lion 69 on by the way, I don't even know if there's somebody with that call. So I'm just saying, out there on social media to create this. Uh, right now, the tinfoil hat squad is out with a vengeance when it comes to our fan base. So you need to nip that. You need to put us on track to a goal and a mission. And I believe that regardless of how we finish, I think that people will be moving on to the 27 the short season with a positive attitude. If we continue to just let things be, I think this is damaging to the product and to the club. Like we have said before, the casuals, are usually the first victims, if you will, of the disappointment. But you have a fan base. I mean, I pay for my ticket when it's absolutely a financial decision that I regret. My wife and I are in the market to buy a house, and having season tickets absolutely shouldn't be a priority, but I still do because I love the club that
I'm in
much.
this. I'm in the same camp, David. So I feel you. I totally get
Yeah,
it.
it's ridiculous, brother. So
Yeah.
the point is, my friends, and I don't know what time it is, and Ivy has to go to bed. The point is I would love for the club to talk to the fans and to say your feelings are valid. We acknowledge you. We see you. We are working on it, and I guarantee you that it's gonna do a world of good for the fans. John, thank you for the invitation. I know Extra is your baby. I will try to be as much as possible on this space. David, enough said, my friend. I can't thank you enough for joining us and always giving us insight. This guy, this guy has the sources, and I'm happy that he's here with us. And so I first I would like to you. By the way, we're having great numbers, even though we suck. I don't know if it's like people need somebody to a shoulder to cry on. So thank you for giving us that opportunity. And as far as us, we'll be back on Monday. We are going out to Columbus. The following week, we're going to Open Cup, a trophy and a tournament deep deep into my heart. Playing a USL League One team in Naples. That should be interesting. And I feel that the Open Cup may be our saving grace, even if we fail to make playoffs or perhaps we sneak in and we don't do anything. It shall be interesting to have the Open Cup with Antoine Griezmann. So we'll have to see. Thank you very much, guys.
Welcome. Anything
Yeah,
else, David G?
yeah, I'll say this. Listen, there should be a lot of excitement for this summer. I think, regardless of what it is. Obviously, this team is down in the doldrums. We'll see what happens against Columbus this weekend. But I think if you want to have solace in anything, look at Open Cup. We should be going into Naples. We should be playing Naples off the field. Sorry, Naples. I know it's your second year or third year of existence, but we should be hanging 4 or 5 goals on you and walking out of there easily. I think that's a competition we can win. I think it's a competition, obviously, that's in our history at this point. We should be making the most of it. I'm not a Leagues Cup guy, so I'm not going to sit here and bang the drum for Leagues Cup. You won't catch me doing that. But I think that's number one. And then secondly, get excited about what Griezmann is. I still see people out there that are like, I don't know about Griezmann. It doesn't fix problems. Guys, honestly, don't be stupid. What are we talking about here? This guy was a world-class player. He's still a very good player. He's going to bring leadership. He's going to bring poise. He's going to bring winning mentality. He's going to also bring his skill, which he still has. And honestly, if you're free this week, they play tomorrow against Barcelona. It's Barcelona in Champions League. So you can watch them because they're about to have a home and away with them. I promise you Griezmann's going to be a part of that. To plug myself a little bit, I wrote a very long article on Antoine Griezmann. It's about 6,600 words, and it's not just about Griezmann himself. It's about tactically what Orlando City can do to get him involved. It's about the things he's good at, the things he's not so good at. Don't worry, I put a table of contents, so if you want to go check that out, you can find that on the Loud and Proud website. But that was a passion project of mine. A love child, honestly. It took me a while to put together, but I think it does a really good job at explaining who Griezmann is as a person, but also what he's going to give you on the field. And so I'd be honored if you check that out and do that. And then, of course, for most of you that probably know, every Monday and Thursday, Luis and I chop it up on LPO. Talk everything Orlando City. We have a John Rollins sized hole in our pod right now, but we're making do as he makes his way back to England. But just really love the space that we're all building together. Obviously the N90 Minutes guys and all their folks. Also to the Lions Den guys as well, even to Citro and David Rowe, who do their podcast as they do every week and everything. So we're really trying to build back the Orlando space that hasn't existed for a bit of time. So we're doing it one pod at a time.
Definitely. And about Griezmann, check. I couldn't read your article. I'm sorry, I couldn't get through that many words. But no, it was from what I read, a lot of great insight, and I'm sure you writing it's all great insight. But to me, the thing that says the type of player Griezmann's going to be is in the interview Gallardo had with him when he asked him, "What's your best position?" On the pitch, what position can you contribute the most? And and I'm paraphrasing one because it was translated from Spanish to subtitles. But he basically said wherever helps the team win. And that's the type of player we needed to bring in. That's why, when there were rumors a couple of years ago that Messi was going to come here, the rumors about Ronaldo coming here or Neymar, nothing against those 3 guys, especially Ronaldo and Messi, 2 of the greatest to ever play. But what's the club going to look like 3, 4, 5 years after they leave? Look at the situation Miami's in. Messi brought all his buddies from Barcelona and from Argentina over, and what are they going to look like in 2 years and 3 years when they're all gone? Their academy's depleted, their reserve squad's pretty much depleted. Whereas you bring in somebody like Griezmann, and who's at least he's saying the right things. Now we still have to see if he's going to, walk the walk. He's definitely done the talking correctly. But that's the type of guy you need to bring in, like Mueller in Canada. I can't. Why can't I remember what team he plays for?
Yeah,
Vancouver. Thank you. I kept wanting to say Montreal, but Montreal's the exact opposite coast of them. What he's done in Vancouver, we saw it handedly in that match they played against us last year. You see what Son's doing out and the level Son's bringing to that club out there, and the form that every member of that team's in. Whether they're playing us when we're at our lowest or playing any other team, they haven't given up a goal this year. And that all goes back to the leadership that they have in that locker room. And that's something that we've missed really since Nani's been here. So there's a lot to get excited about, not just his play. And you hear Atletico Madrid fans talk about him. He's not world class anymore, but he is very darn close to it. He is the best player on that team, according to their fans. Stats might say something different, but according to their fans, he's still the best player on their team. And, they were ready to turn on him if he left in March with 2 trophies on the table still. And he didn't. He did right by them, and he's leaving in the summer. I think there were other things also. Our manager position and everything had to do with it. But there's a lot to get excited for, and a lot, everybody's saying is right. And unfortunately, we still have to wait, 3.5 months to see if all of that plays out. But, if we go and we don't sign a coach this summer, I will be asking questions of Ricardo. But, I know this is having the 3 of us on is dangerous, because the 3 of us can talk the paint off of a wall when it comes to our club. So I know we could be here for another 2 or 3 hours if we let ourselves. But I think we've had a great show tonight. Everybody that tunes in, everybody that watches, everybody that listens, thank you. As always, your comments are welcome. If you want to make an appearance on the show, like we always say, ask. That's how David G got on. He asked. I think you even asked right before or right as you were starting LPO too, if I recall correctly.
Mm-hmm.
We'll say yes. You don't have to show your face, just have your voice, and you can even use a voice mod as far as I'm concerned. Just don't make it sound absolutely ridiculous. But everybody that watches on a weekly basis and listens on a weekly basis, thank you guys. Everybody that watches the main show, thank you guys. We're grateful. David G's doing great things, stuff that I feel like we've never have had as far as analysis of the club goes. He really does a deep dive on the players coming in and the players that we have had on our club. And, I've learned a lot from him, learned a lot about the Brian Ojeda signing, especially because he was one of the players I didn't know a lot about. It's make sure you catch his articles and catch him and give him a good listen as well. But for the 2 Davids and I, Luke, Misael, Ahmed, everybody from the main show, thank you guys for tuning in. And as always, Vamos Orlando.